I have come to the conclusion that Rakugo as a series really just loves stabbing you in the heart. I'm having this feels-good moment when I see Yotaro just speaking with his Rakugo to Bon, and you just have his heart being laid out on the table. And then, once Bon finally works up the courage, after all of these emotions just flowing throughout the room, he sits down. The police storm in and take away the mob boss. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Like, oh my... What a way to ruin a perfectly good moment. As always, you can't have a full happy episode of Rakugo. There needs to be some form of sadness throughout the episode because... yeah, it was getting too happy. It was too happy. It was too happy of an episode when you see Yotaro just doing that Rakugo, doing this performance for Bon, and then that happens. I'm like, you fucking serious right now? Like, you fucking serious? Oh, yeah. So this episode really brings into perspective of Bon's character and what is going on. And as we know, when it comes to Rakugo, age, or aging, is a theme of this series. You know, Rakugo is dying out. It's a dying out, entertainment. And, the buildings of Rakugo are dying out or closing down. And even the people that have performed Rakugo are dying because of age. Aging is a big theme of this series. And once again, that is brought up in this episode with Bon. We get to see a little bit of what Bon is feeling in this episode and how he feels about himself and his current situation of how he's unable to perform Rakugo. And it's something I think we were all very aware of what was going on with Bon as a person. But when he states it in this episode, it really just hits you. When he says, you know how it feels to know that your body is aging, that you just feel your body rotting away, and you can't do what you normally did. I can no longer perform Rakugo. It was a truly sad sight, and it shows you the weight of aging, and how all of us must succumb to the inevitable fate of death. It's a sad outlook on life, but that's a thing that comes to us all, and that's the tragic truth. And Bon is currently in that point of his life where he realizes he doesn't have much longer to live. And he's sad and heartbroken that he cannot live for much longer because he wants to perform Rakugo. He does have fun doing Rakugo, but he realizes that he can't. He can't perform it and it be fun because his body can't hold out like it once did. He can't do that. And he realizes, and he's very aware of what state his body is in. And it really saddens me seeing someone like Bon, that we've seen actually throughout the series, aging slowly. I mean, if we really think about it, we have seen Bon from his early days, from like a kid, to where he is at now as an old man. We've seen this man age throughout the series of Season 1 and Season 2, and it just shows you his journey of life, what he has been through, and it shows that even if you have a great start, even the strongest of people, the strongest willed of people, like how they want to do certain things in their life, eventually age will take them, and that's what's going on with Bon. He is facing this crisis, and when he's sitting here talking to Yotaro and all that, talking about his age, and then Konatsu just talks to him like, you were trying to, end your life, weren't you? You were trying to, jump off the bridge. It really just throws into the loop of how Bon is feeling. He feels like there's just no other option. He's sad because there's just nothing he can do. He's just waiting for the sweet embrace of death. That's all he feels like he is waiting for now. There's just nothing else he can do. Everything that drove him throughout his entire life, for instance, performing Rakugo, that's kind of been taken away from him because he can no longer really do it at the best of his ability because of the way his body is. Even if he was going to perform in this episode, it wouldn't have been like it was in the past. It wouldn't have. His body has aged. And with age comes to where you can no longer do things that you once could. And even if he did perform in this episode and there was no interruptions, we would clearly see how much he has aged and how he can't do what he did many episodes ago, which is sad. It's a sad outlook, but it really just once again nails home the themes of this series and how everything succumbs to age. With the passing of time, things eventually break down. And also, when things break down, a new generation must pop up and is born. And that's kind of what's going on. And what we see displayed throughout this episode through, Yotaro's child, but also a disciple he's gotten, actually. And it really also shows, once again, age as a theme as well. You remember earlier on, when the series first began, Yotaro was someone that was a novice. He wasn't the best at Rakugo. He was coming to Bond to learn Rakugo, and he's like, hey, I want to learn this and all that. Can you be my teacher? And he was someone that possibly would never think could have a student to learn underneath him. But in this episode, we see that he does have students. He has students learning from him that are interested in Rakugo. So at the very least, the tradition of Rakugo isn't dying out. It's still carrying on to the next generation. And so even if something ages and withers, something else will be born in its place and come about. And that's what we see displayed throughout this episode. Amongst all the sadness, we see new Rakugo forming, new people stepping up to the, plate to be able to do what the predecessors can no longer do. And Yotaro being able to do what he did in this episode when he performed that Rakugo, which was probably the most emotional Rakugo, I think, in the series to date, because of the message behind it, but also the emotions, the raw emotions the character of Yotaro put into it. But it wasn't even the character, it was also the voice actor. I just want to commend the voice actor for how much talent was put into that scene. And it wasn't even the voice actor either, just all the voice actor. It was also the production team that worked on that scene. And I feel like many really need to take note of how good that scene was, because that was such a fantastic performance by not just the actual writing of the scene of Rakugo, but actually the animators, the production team, the voice actors. What they did for that scene went way beyond what we have probably seen already throughout the series. I mean, there were some gorgeous and beautiful scenes that have been displayed throughout Rakugo, but I feel like this is a step above the rest. When you see Yotaro just crying, and you see the facial expressions, and the way, he's just, moving around, just the way his body is just going about throughout the story, you can actually imagine what's going on in this story. And when I can visualize while watching a show what is going on, it's doing its storytelling properly. But it wasn't even that. Someone that tends to watch anime with headphones, I was able to pick up on a couple of things to where the audio of the episode was way above what we have seen previously from the series. When you're in the theater and you're listening to a performance, like Yotaro's doing a performance in a theater, you can hear that echoish type sound of a large room, like a theater, which it suits, the room they're in. But thanks to the room being so confined and little, the way the audio was in that scene, it was just such a astounding scene that I could not believe I was listening to. The way the voice of Yotaro sounded in that scene, the way he was just displaying his emotions and throwing his heart out there to try to rekindle this love that, Bond has lost, to try to make him have fun once again, have fun performing Rakugo. And when he's just doing this entire story, the animators throwing in these little key signs with the character's movements, to the voice acting, to also the way just the character was just animated, it made the scene so much better. And it really shows how much love is being put in to Rakugo. And I mean, it really is something I'd love to see from more anime studios, because there is anime studios out there that do care about their work. And I don't think every anime studios, just don't care. They're just out there to produce anime and they don't care at all. I do feel like a lot of people that work on anime, they do care. They're passionate. But sometimes there's people that are even more passionate than others, and you can clearly see that in this episode, how far the animators and the entire team that was working on this episode, they went way beyond what they probably had to do. They took extra steps, probably worked extra hours just to make this episode, and you can clearly see the effort they put into it, which hit me as a viewer of Rakugo. So well done, the entire staff that worked on this episode. You definitely deserve a medal for this, because this was by far the best episode you have produced of Rakugo. So with that being said, this was a bittersweet episode with some happy and sad moments, but definitely the best episode to date. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel about this episode? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Please be honest in the comments below, and I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.